So, in our next lesson, we are talking about the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And because it would be too long, we are splitting up this particular lesson into 3 parts. Here, in the first part, I will introduce you slowly to the hieroglyphs, what they are, as well as showing you the uniliteral or monoliteral hieroglyphs. Those are those hieroglyphs with just a single sound. So, with that being said, let us begin. Now, hieroglyphs are the picture sign writing system used for monumental and literary ancient Egyptian texts, mostly Middle Egyptian. This system mixes phonetic signs, signs that spell sounds, with logograms or ideograms. Those are signs that stand for whole words. And determinatives, those are silent classifier signs that mark semantic fields. Gardner's classic sign list, the standard teaching reference, enumerates the common signs used in Middle Egyptian and nearby stages. In total, having 763 hieroglyphs. Of course, in Old Egyptian, hieroglyphs were already used, but most texts are in Middle Egyptian because that is the time of the peak of Egyptian literature. Of course, in Late Egyptian, hieroglyphs were still in use, but gradually being replaced with a different system. Now, how do hieroglyphs even work? First, we have 3 functional types. Phonograms, those are the phonetic signs. Signs that represent consonantal sounds. And these come in 3 sizes. Uniliteral, 1 consonant, also known as monoliteral. Then we have biliteral, 2 consonants, and triliteral, 3 consonants. Egyptian writing normally records consonants only, vowels are not written. So the phonograms form an essentially consonantal orthography. Next, logograms or ideograms. Signs used to complete written words. It can be followed by a small sign, for example a vertical stroke or horizontal, depending on the writing. We will get to this in a moment. To mark that it is to be read as a word rather than as a phonetic sequence. Then determinatives or classifiers. Those are unpronounced signs placed at the end of a word to disambiguate meaning. For instance, when a word names a man, a god, an abstract concept, an action, a plant, and so on. Determinatives help readers group homophonous sequences. Again, those are those sequences with the identical sound into semantic classes. And they are by far the largest group. Then we have, again, uniliterals, biliterals, and triliterals. So, the uniliteral signs are the alphabet, so to speak, core. Traditionally, 24 common uniliterals are taught as the Egyptian consonantal alphabet, but Egyptian does not have that kind of alphabet, so it is just an approximation here. And then, biliteral and triliteral signs encode common consonant clusters, and are often used because they reduce the number of signs needed to spell a word, which comes pretty handy when you have to carve all of the signs into stone. But in practice, scribes mix uniliteral and multi-consonant phonograms for economy and clarity. Next, phonetic complements and redundancy. You see, a logogram is often followed by one or more phonetic complements. Uniliteral signs that repeat one or more of the consonants of the word's root. These complements confirm pronunciation and disambiguate homographs. They are deliberate redundancy that helps readers. Now, the writing direction and grouping. Here is where there's a little bit different. Signs are grouped into visual blocks. For example, in Korean, we do have something similar. And arranged in lines, and here the word is a bit different. Because they can run left to right, as well as right to left, or even vertically. You see, the facing direction of animal, people, tell you which way to read the line, because they look toward the beginning, and usually when we have it vertically, we would read from top to bottom. So, layout is aesthetic as well as linguistics. Signs are balanced into compact groups. Because in the ancient Egyptian culture, the aesthetic was as important as the meaning itself. And then we have cartouches and foreign royal names. Royal names and certain foreign names are written inside cartouches, which are oval enclosure. Cartouches preserve phonetic spellings of names, which proved rather crucial to decipherment because cartouche could be matched to known Greek, Ptolemaic royal names, as shown in one of my videos on my main channel a while ago with the wonderful Cleopatra VII, a part that we will have on this channel very soon as well. And lastly, the aforementioned Gardina's sign list. Sir Alan Gardina's canonical list organizes the common signs into 26 thematic categories, A to Z, and is widely used as the standard classroom index. Gardina's table lists about 763 signs as the most common Middle Egyptian repertoire. So, we will see how many I can teach you. But there's still the question, how do we know the phonetic values? Well, here comes the Rosetta Stone, a trilingual degree, hieroglyphic, demotic, which is the second to last stage of the Egyptian language, and Greek, dated to 196 BC, supplied the key parallel text that allowed scholars to begin matching Egyptian signs to sounds and words. Very briefly, early steps came from Thomas Young, who identified phonetic characters into cartouches. But the decisive advance was Jean-François Champollion, 1822, who used the Rosetta parallels plus his knowledge in Coptic, which is the latest and last stage of Egyptian language, to show that hieroglyphs combined phonetic and ideographic functions, and to build an alphabet of phonetic signs. From there, scholars reconstructed consonantal values, which would be vowels are usually inferred from later Coptic evidence. The Rosetta Stone, therefore, anchors the historical proof that hieroglyphs have phonetic as well as ideographic components. And something I have seen many people get wrong. It took very long. It was not just a day or week's worth work. It took years until the Rosetta Stone was fully deciphered. So, and to end this lesson, let me show you a few of the hieroglyphs. To be more precise, let's have a look at the uniliteral or monoliteral ones. And here, I would like to say I'm reusing my old audio for this because I have already recorded this and I'm too lazy to re-record this again. Starting with our first letter, A. This hieroglyph is depicted as a vulture representing the sound A. However, keep in mind the Egyptians didn't write vowels the way we do. Their A isn't exactly like ours. It's what linguists call semi-vocalic, similar to the Arabic Ain. But don't worry too much about the other hieroglyphs in this word just yet. We will unpack those as we go. So, the word we are looking at is abkek, well actually abkech, which means to clap the hands. Notice that sneaky E in the brackets? It's there to make pronunciation easier when we are not sure what vowel actually fits. Because remember, ancient Egyptians had a habit of leaving out vowels altogether, and let's face it, considering they carved their writing into stone walls very often, it does make sense to skip them, right? Next, we move on to a hieroglyph shaped like a foot, actually a little bit of flag as well. This one represents the sound B. And if you caught my first little trip, you might recognize this in the word webben, which means to shine or to rise. Now, I need to apologize for the less than perfect image quality here. It was a challenge to find one that matches the visual detail I wanted to show you. But this helps highlight an important point. Hieroglyphs can have varying styles, similar to the fact that we all have similar writing styles as well. The ideogram or ideograph might look slightly different, which is totally normal. Now it's getting interesting. Meet a hieroglyph of a placenta, which makes the sound k, a soft k. Think of the Scottish loch, and you have got it. Sometimes you won't see an E in brackets, because it's unnecessary for pronunciation, assuming of course you can say the word to begin with. And yes, I reused this word, because there's more to explain, not because I was lazy, I swear. Next up is a stylized hand, representing the sound D. And here's a little fun fact. When people claim that ancient Egyptians had helicopters, for whatever reason, or submarines, presumably for the Nile I guess, and they are often looking at overcarved hieroglyphs, and the D hieroglyph frequently shows up in these cases. Overcarving wasn't unusual. And this word, ked, means to fare downstream. At the end, you will see a boat hieroglyph. It is an ideogram that doesn't make a sound but clarifies meaning, and you will soon understand why these silent ideograms are essential. Now, on to an arm hieroglyph, which stands for the sound. You might recognize the word re, meaning sun, and yes, it's the same word used for the sun god Ra or Re. The difference? Well, the ideogram. But in this case, you could rely solely on the ideograms if you wanted. They may be silent, but they carry a lot of weight in terms of context. Oh look, a snake. Specifically, a horned viper. Fascinating, right? Again, apologies for the image quality. So, from left to right, we have got our vulture, R, followed by the horned viper, and finally an adorable quail chick, which stands for U. Later on we will see another sound it can represent. Together, these form the word afu, which means to injure. Interestingly, the ancient Egyptians didn't have a distinct V sound, but the horned viper was often used in its place. So, up next, we have a char, which represents the sound G. Don't stress about the two other hieroglyphs beside it just yet. we'll get to those soon, I promise. Now, let's focus on this ideogram. It's a gem. The word ger means night. And if you look closely, you can spot the sky embedded in the design. So, moving on, we have a reed hut, which symbolizes one of the two h sounds, the two h sounds. Notice how the familiar sun ideogram pops up again. And this reveals how hieroglyphs can share semantic links, connecting related ideas. For example, in the word heru, meaning day, the sun ideogram points us toward the context. In this case, daytime in the desert, when the sun dominates the sky. These silent ideograms aren't just decoration, even though they look really pretty. They are essential clues. Now, this H sound has a rougher breathe to it. It is almost like the initial sound in hot. It's all about expelling the breath forcefully. And enter the next H sound, represented by a twisted flax. Notice the dot under the H? That's a marker for smoother breathing, more like the H in hello. Again, apologies for the image quality here. Now we see a beautiful owl. Our twisted flax and a crocodile ideogram. The word mesech means crocodile. Next up is the I sound. Actually, it's hovering between I and J, represented by a reed leaf, the kind that grows by riverbanks. Adjacent to it sits again our beautiful owl, forming the word im, meaning therein. A quick side note, there's a nearly identical hieroglyph with a small but significant difference. The number of reed leaves, so watch out for that. Oh, there's another snake. This time it is a cobra, and it signifies a j sound, like in judge. Here's where things get interesting. Stacked hieroglyphs. Read these top to bottom, with an ideogram below them. The word jed means eternity, and the horizontal line crowns its meaning. Now, the handled basket representing k. Careful, there will be a similar sound coming soon. We see another owl and our basket, with a third ideogram, a stylized arm. It looks like as it would offering us something. The word meg means behold. So, now it's time for something unique. The l, also L sound, is absent in ancient Egyptian and only later adopted by Greek scholars. You will find it in names like the great queen Cleopatra. The rope hieroglyph used here is a special case, which we will revisit soon. But first, let us admire this owl again. This is one of my favorites. It stands for And there's another k sound, which is usually transliterated as k with a q. This one comes from further back in the mouth than k. The word Kemet means Egypt or Black Land. Next, just simple peaks representing N. We can go through this rather quickly, as most of these symbols are now familiar. The final hieroglyph here, again another ideogram, and we have the word bin, meaning miserable. So, and here's our rope again. As mentioned, vowels often aren't written, but for a short O, the rope steps in. There's also the quail chick, sometimes seen representing a long O, though I haven't found any example for this one. Lastly, we have the woven reed mat, well, rectangle, which stands for P. The original name of the god Anubis was Inup, with that beautiful ideogram at the end. And you may notice the absence of an E between N and P, replaced by an U. This traces back to ancient translations. Scholars recorded these names during their travels, allowing us to match them later on. And yes, that deserves its own short video. Let me know if you're interested. Now we come to a mouth, representing the sound r. Take a look at this beautiful word, nefer, which means beautiful. Notice how this time the ideogram appears at the start. Now we have a bit weird looking symbol. It is supposed to be a bolt of folded cloth, and it is representing the S sound, so S. You will see here that sometimes a word can include more than one ideogram. Take neges, which means commoner or poor man. It's illustrated with a kneeling man and a simple bird, perhaps hinting at the notion of an ordinary person. And now, an old friend, the semicircle, if you remember from our first trip. This is supposed to be a loaf of bread, and it represents the T sound, paired with our woven reed mat, or rectangle, and we get the word pet. Additionally, our ideogram for sky, and we have the word for sky. So, let's revisit our cute quail chick. Now it is used for the sound V. And with the word via, which with the boat ideogram here, means sacred boat. By now, you might have started noticing a pattern with ideograms. Isn't it interesting how to fare downstream and sacred boat share the same ideogram, a river-related theme? And here's our quail chick again, this time taking on the sound oo. And you might be able to spot a trend here. In the word heru, which means stay, you will see the quail chick sitting in a different spot. And here's the simplified rule. It's read as v when it starts a word. It is read as u when it is either in the middle or at the end. And if you're curious, I can share in the comment section a deeper dive into this topic. Just let me know. We are almost there. Next, we see the reed leaf again, but doubled up to represent the Y, actually pronounced like a long E, like in Mary. This can be tricky, since it's not always easy to tell if it is a double E or Y, or just a single Y. Take for instance the word ke, meaning another. This word is actually in a masculine form, and yes, ancient Egyptian had grammatical genders. By the way, speaking of genders, the next hieroglyph is a bolt on a door, which stands for Z. With that, we can now read Z. With its ideogram at the end, a sitting woman, indicating that the word means woman. And yes, sometimes an ideogram can even stand alone and still representing the whole word and also keeping the pronunciation intact. Just two more. This time we have a pool of water, which represents sh. Even though it looks like two letters in English, it's actually just one sound. Now, take a look at this word, resh, which, with two ideograms at the end, means to rejoice or to be glad. And finally, we reach the last symbol, tethering rope, which represents the sound sh. And though it's spelled with three letters this time in English, it is still just a single sound. And actually, I only could find one example, and that was the word Rechenu, which means Syria or Palestine.